Okay, quiz question. What's the difference between swag and merch?
Swag and merch. Swag is an internal branded product, like a hoodie, like, a Wellmeadow hoodie.
Yep.
And merch would be something that you give away to, fans, a bit like...
Fans. Have we got fans?
We've got fans.
Have we got fans?
From Australia to Norway.
We have.
And everywhere in between.
Yes.
Mostly Shrewsbury.
Very in between. But hello to all the people in Australia and Norway. We know you're listening. Good. Well, I'm glad you explained that to me, because my lad, who when he was at university, was always talking about the swag that they got given for the various sports teams he was in, and I didn't know what he was talking about. I'd heard of merch, but yeah, you mentioned it early on today, and I'm now. Well,
educated. we're looking at swagging. I don't know if that's something.
Is that a polite word?
That's that word. Yeah. We're looking at getting Wellmeadow swag for the team. Everybody's kind of pretty interested at the moment. Swagged up, branded, and all of that. So we're just looking at thinking, well, maybe we need to get some merch for the podcast. Maybe other people. Do the people want it? That's the question.
Comment, SME Growth podcast on your hoodie.
Who knows what we could do?
On your pint glass.
Pint glass. It's got to be.
Maybe we could have a beer called the SME Growth PA.
if there's any brewers out there that want to,
know any good brewers?
Know any brewers? Any good brewers?
Note to listeners, I do a bit of brewing, but I'm not a good brewer, apparently.
No, it's a good brews. So maybe we're doing a limited edition.
Okay.
SME.
So write in on a postcard, please. Email our usual address. Ideas for merch. What people like.
Teacup.
Good. Well, with that thought in mind, shall we do another podcast? Hello again, and welcome to the SME Growth podcast from Wellmeadow. I'm Dave Parry, and it won't surprise you to know that I'm joined here by Rich Buckle. Hello, Rich.
Hello.
And here we are again. Now, this week's subject, we did refer to this sort of a few weeks ago when we were doing some recruitment. And we've also done a series of podcasts around marketing different things. Remember we did one with Seb when he came in as a guest on marketing a town, a place, which is a bit different. And we did one, which I think is our most listened to podcast, is internal marketing to your employees and other stakeholders. Yeah. So they're marketing things that are unusual, not your usual product or service. And we wanted to do another one of those because we were doing some recruitment. So the marketing for job applicants. You're marketing your company, not for people to buy off you, but to come and devote some of their career to you. Different field entirely.
Different field, slightly different objective maybe. Well, definitely.
We're still selling, isn't it? Or marketing and selling and persuading and communicating. So all those things are common.
And I think actually probably companies spend an awful lot of money on recruiting.
Yes.
And time.
Yeah.
And so...
but maybe they're on the wrong things.
On the wrong things. So I think that's
I'd be interested if business owners here look at your accounts and just see how much you spent on recruitment consultants in the last 12 months. We all have to do it. It's part of the way the world works. They have
do we?
Or do we? Yes. Okay. Lots of companies do it because they have access, they say, to candidates. But actually, if you had access to your own candidates, and you had a way of filtering them so you weren't bombarded, because that is a valuable service that recruitment consultancies provide, not just giving access to clients, but also doing a bit of the sifting for you. But if you could both get access and do a bit of qualifying, which is a very marketing term, of candidates, then you can maybe do a lot of that yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, we've done a bit of recruitment ourselves, haven't we?
We've done it recently. But I was, in preparation for this, I was casting my mind back to how we used to do it 10 years ago, maybe, longer. And it probably won't be that dissimilar to other people that haven't changed their process for a long time. But you have to place a job ad, right? Somewhere. You either ring a recruitment consultancy, or if you're doing it yourself, you place a job ad. And where do you place it? Well, way back when you put it in the paper. But now, there are websites designed for such things, job websites. So you just put one on those, maybe on LinkedIn or something like that. And that's how you'd start. And then we've evolved over the years, and just to canter through that, and it's a bit whistle stop really, but you start adding a bit more information than just the job, but you start describing the person that you're after, the person's spec, and then you talk about the company a bit more. On your webpage, rather than just listing the vacancies, you may go into a bit more detail about what a career with your company would be like, what opportunities there are for promotion, what the culture is like, what the values are like. You might do all that sort of thing. And then one innovation we came up with as part of our response process, so when people sent us an application, including a CV, we responded with something that we called the letter from the MD. And we helped a few clients do this, didn't we?
And it was designed to be a bit of a warts and all. This is what it's like to work here.
Yeah, very frank.
Very frank. This is where the company's going. Just to give a little bit more flavour of the company rather than just the role that the person
and not
going
come
to.
across as if everything is always perfect and this is the brilliant company that nothing will ever go wrong at.
And I think as well, well, I suppose in one sense it made the MD think about the role, which in some cases they just hadn't because it wasn't on their radar particularly. But also, it's as an applicant, you are in a conversation of sorts with the MD.
It's a bit simulated. The lie to that really, and giving it away now, for some of the clients we used to help, we used to write the letter from the MD for them, or at least draft it for them to knock into shape. But like you say, not all MDs were ready to do that, comfortable to do that. So we had to break that blank sheet of paper problem. Of course, these days you just ask ChatGPT, wouldn't you?
Exactly.
He'll write it for you.
But then that evolved from the letter to doing video.
Yeah, I think the first step was a reasonably natural evolution, where instead of writing the letter and putting it in an email, you'd have a talking head, shot to camera, pretty much saying the same things, but it's much harder to fake that. Whereas we can ghostwrite the quote-unquote letter from the MD, you can't replicate the MD actually sitting there in front of a camera, mic'd up and saying the same sort of things with a degree of authenticity. And that really propelled us a big step forward back in the day, didn't it? When people started receiving that, we got a lot of feedback, positive feedback from that.
Yeah, and I think because you're starting to see things like facial expressions, you're starting to see the person who is the person working with.
Or even the fact that you bothered. Normally, in bigger companies, recruitment is palmed off to somebody in the HR department or the recruiting manager. The fact that the MD has taken the time to record something, especially if it's specific to that role, rather than just, once a year we'll do an update of the recruitment video, that came across really quite well.
Yeah.
So then go on, and what's the pinnacle of our achievement so far?
I'm not sure it's the pinnacle, but we...
if that's the top, then we're doomed.
Yeah, exactly.
But you are famous, though, you have to admit.
The only way is up. So, well, I don't know. I can still go out on the streets and...
You've not been stopped in Sainsbury's or Aldi
yet.
Right, okay.
So, still working on it.
That's because of the costume.
I'll have to do something a bit more dramatic next time. But no, we wanted to take it... I don't know. I think partly it's to cut through the noise a little bit. So rather than, I suppose, the MD video was already when someone was in the process. Yeah, they've already had applied for the role.
That's true. It didn't go out publicly.
So one of the things we wanted to do was try and just cut through the noise a little bit of saying, hey, here's a job advert, we're hiring type of thing, but to actually come up with something that is semi-evergreen in terms of content, but also that shows a little bit of what Wellmeadow's about, what the offices are like, what the values are, what it's like to work here, what kind of work we do.
What your colleagues are like.
All those sorts of things. So we thought, well, the best way to do this is using a video. Yeah. So we scripted something and we, storyboarded it, etc. Did the video and we kind of did a 3-parter. Yeah. So the first part was something that would be more kind of classically...
Well, more you and me talking to camera. We had some employees. Hannah was on there talking about what it's like working here.
Shots of the office, shots of the type of work we're doing.
Bit of B-roll, yeah.
So it was very much, play it safe, that one. Then I was like, well, I just need an excuse to dress up, really. We did a different style about it, which was much more to camera, explaining about the role. So it was kind of, probably more, rather than Wellmeadow focused, about just attracting people into the company, talking about the company.
It was about the role.
It was much more role specific, with a sort of comedy element, apparently.
Well, it is still on our Join Us page on the website, and it's been reposted thousands of times on social media. There's comedic value.
And then after that, we kind of, in a very creative way, transitioned into a kind of montage of the type of work we're doing, which again was designed to be eye-catchy, but also these are the kind of things we're doing. These are the kind of skills we need. So it's almost it's a way of trying to get across what you're looking for. Tell me you're recruiting without telling me you're recruiting, type of thing.
So let's not make any bones about it. There was a lot more investment in time to produce that last one than the MD video, and in turn that was a lot more than just scribbling something on an email, and that was a lot more than not doing anything at all. So we've gone through various stages of evolution on that, to the point there now where it's a reasonably serious undertaking. It's several man days worth of effort to produce that.
So I think though it's probably worth thinking about it in terms of return on investment, because we can't put numbers on it per se, although you could probably approximate it. But what I would say is that the response that we got to actually doing a video was probably 10x anything we did that was just putting adverts out there. Yeah. And I think probably the quality of candidates that we saw was also higher.
Yeah, sure.
From that.
And I think that showed an increase through each of the stages of the evolution. Yeah. But there was a step change when we did the last one. So even when we did the early letter of the MD or the video from the MD, that was better. We got great feedback from it. People were surprised. They said, "Oh, you've taken the bother." That was good. You're almost getting people already positive about your company from you being just a stranger. They don't know how many people work for you, even. And suddenly they're warming to you. And then on the back of that, we used a different technique to what we had before, where we got people to fill in a self-assessment questionnaire online. And the questionnaire was nothing other than restating the requirements that were in the job advert, really, plus a little bit of how far are you from where our offices are, and are you eligible to work in the UK type stuff. So it was nothing complicated about it. But we found that form then allowed people to self-select a lot more. They'd seen the video now. So rather than just having this bland choice, do I fill a form in? I don't know what I'm going for. Now I either want to fill the form in more because I've seen it, or I've read something in there which means it's not for me and they didn't. And we got a reasonably high fallout rate from people applying but they're not filling the form in, which we took as a good thing. Because everyone that was a fallout meant we didn't waste our time reading CVs and interviewing only for it not to work out in the end. Yeah. So we made it much more efficient for us and got better candidates. So that was just for that early stage. Then we went to the team video, and I think, as I say, an absolutely step change. We got much better pool of candidates, got more in number without using any agencies, and we got better quality of candidates. Yeah. But there was that other benefit we got from our clients as well, which was perhaps a bit unexpected. I don't know what you thought.
Benefits of
just when the clients fed back, they'd seen that we'd done it.
Yeah, I think it's not novel. I mean, there's plenty of companies out there that have done recruitment videos, but they tend to be, I think Barclays Bank did a classic one that's kind of often lauded online. It's generally the realm, it seems, of much larger companies. Clearly, they've got the budget. Clearly, they're recruiting a lot more people, so maybe it makes sense. But like I say, in terms of return on investment, I would say that we could probably use this video or big chunks of it for the next 6 to 12 months worth of recruitment easily.
We can still add new bits in and freshen
up.
We
can add new bits in. I'd say that it probably resulted in us seeing 4 or 5 very decent candidates.
Well, as is borne out by the fact that we were advertising for one role and we've made 2 offers and another 2 conditional later in the year type suggestions.
So in terms of, if that you compare the investment in time and effort that went into the video.
Well, and what do you spend on a recruitment consultant? 15% of, let's say, 20 to 30 grand salary, depending on the roles you're applying for. That you're talking 4 or 5 grand, aren't you, potentially for someone, and 15% maybe at the low end. So if you saved having to spend that on 3 or 4 recruits,
and you've got the content, and actually I think what was great about it as well, and credit to everyone here for putting up with my ridiculous ideas about what to do, but we came in on a Sunday to film it because we just needed the office empty, and so that was just part of the thing that we needed to do to film. Everyone came in. It was actually quite a good environment. Everyone was enjoying it. So there's actually it's another way of actually getting your existing team involved in that process of saying, hey, look, we're going to grow the team. We're going to have new people in. Sometimes it can get maybe a bit more focused on the new people. Yeah. Actually, this is a great way of just saying, hey.
Well, and if any other company's thinking about doing anything similar to this, the concept of involving, concept of involving your current employees to say, look, whoever we recruit, they're going to be your colleagues too, right? Yeah. So if you want a hand in getting the best ones, this is how to influence the process. You can help advertise it, tell them what it's really like.
So yeah,
that worked very well. Okay, that's the video. That's our process and how it's evolved, and it's sort of culminated this latest version anyway in the team video. But clearly, if the subject here is marketing generally of the company to attract new applicants or applicants for jobs, there are various other channels and other things we can do as well. Some of these may be more familiar to other people, like we said earlier about placing a job ad online somewhere. But it's worth just mentioning each of these because there's an angle on them that I think does need to be taken quite carefully. The first one I wanted to touch on that maybe people are starting to look at a bit more, and it's what in the trade they call earned media. It's that exposure you get where people write reviews online and share stuff. So a review of an employer is now becoming a go-to place for anybody applying for a job. Now, you may think that small companies, we don't have big reviews. Well, you might be surprised, if you search for stuff. I mean, there are dedicated sites out there, aren't there, just for people to review their employer, like Glassdoor, for example.
Yep.
And some of the job websites do as well. I think Indeed does and Total Jobs do and so on. So have a look at those and see what people are saying. I know on Glassdoor, for example, they don't just ask for reviews about what it's like to work at a company from employees that have been there, but also what was the interview process like?
Okay.
How long did it take? Did they get back to me quickly? Were the questions particularly difficult? Were they fair in their treatment and so on? And I think that's a reasonable standard to hold yourself up to.
Yeah, and I would say that we have always tried to humanize, no matter how much automation you kind of put into just making your recruitment process efficient, you still want to make sure it's human. You are talking to people about a job, hopes, aspirations, all of that type of thing.
And they've gone out of their way to spend some time, maybe sometimes it's easier than others, but to apply for you. We always thank people, don't we? Really heartfelt. Thank you for showing an interest in our company, and being even prepared to consider lending a part of your career to us. That's a privilege. We shouldn't take that for, okay, there's a transaction that goes on and someone pays for services provided and so on, but you can choose lots of different places to work for. So I think that's quite humbling, and you need to recognise that. And similarly, when people, all bar one is probably going to be rejected, and maybe even all if you go again, there's a lot more rejections, there are acceptances, and it's so easy to treat that very badly and leave people feeling deflated. And one of the key things we've always made it as one of our sort of watchwords is we're never rejecting the person. We're just telling them that their application didn't come across as well as someone else's application came across. Yep. So we still give people that feedback that you could still have been the best person for the job, but can we give you these few tips because this is how it came across from either your CV or your interview or whatever you did. Yep. And the amount of feedback we've had from that has blown us away as well. It's just
I think the fact that you just contact people makes a huge difference. So many people come back and say, we've applied for loads of jobs and we never hear anything from them. We never get any, contact that we've had the application received or just anything like that. And again, this comes back to, I suppose it's employer branding in a sense. It clearly these are not customers in terms of marketing, but they are people that are going to talk about your company. They are people that are going to talk about your brand. Yep. So it's every single touch point. So if you can actually run a process that's not only kind of humanizing in the sense that, work is an important part of the human experience, that let's, honor people in that, but at the same time help, give feedback to people where appropriate about how they did. A lot of people really, really want it, and it's very, very helpful. But also I think it really does elevate your business in their minds. Yeah. We've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. Yeah.
As you say, every touch point, they don't have to have been an employee to have a view on your company, and they could be badly treated through it. It's worth remembering as well that from an employment law point of view, a person is protected by employment law when they start applying for your job, not when they start working for you. And a lot of business owners don't realise that. So there are some provisions for employment law that you could come unstuck with if you don't handle the application process well. So there's that. And you mentioned just now about those people that maybe didn't get a job here and then still being a valuable touch point for someone to get a reputation from. Don't forget on LinkedIn, you can look up who used to work at a company. not just at going to see who's there now. You can say past companies and do that search. And you can see on there, how long did they spend? Did they get promoted? Were there any recommendations for their work and that sort of thing? So a very diligent job applicant, and you see this more at the senior levels of roles, will go through LinkedIn profiles of current and past employees, not just the employers, the bosses to be, and maybe even the other social media accounts, if they can find them, of existing employees. Find out what sort of people do we think they are. They're going to be my colleagues. I've got to put up with these. No longer is it just a question of, I need to get a job, I'll take anything that's going. Employees, candidates can be very choosy now. 1.3 million vacancies in the country. It's an employees market.
And I think people, particularly younger generation, are looking for different things in the company now.
Yeah.
It's not something in the news about that this morning around whole kind of Gen Z are looking for a different, looking for more purpose in their work, looking for, does management, stand by what it says about environmental issues or equality?
And refer people back to the podcast we did on vision, which talks about the Collins-Porras model, where purpose is a kind of a mainstay. And we talked in there, didn't we, about the fact that purpose is very much needed in recruitment, because people are looking for the company to have a reason for existence, just like the values. The values should be used everywhere, from recruitment right through to appraisals and making decisions at the board level.
Absolutely.
So I think having that purpose right, and culture as well. It's very difficult to write down a culture, but the video has really helped with that. Hopefully people have got the idea now about us that we're sort of serious with a bit of a laugh about edge as well. We tend to mention the odd pint of beer in our podcast. We do a silly comedic video to recruit people with. We're not
classic.
It's not quite your staid, straight-laced professional office that people may think of as other professional service firms. There's a bit of something about it.
Yeah, so you want excellence, but you want creativity, and you want all those things wrapped up in something that.
Yeah, but we're human as well. We're not just a big machine that chews up people and expects you to get your 8 hours or whatever it is of work a day and then go home and forget it. So you're right. You've got to cover things like the purpose and the culture. And in terms of just generally talking about, the general points about doing this, going back to the video, what do you think about the idea that if somebody's looking to get into producing a video, but they haven't got the skills in-house necessarily, or they've got nothing more than an iPhone, maybe not even an external mic, do you think that matters? Do you think it's okay to put yourself out there in a reasonably low-budget way as long as it's authentic? Or do you think that's almost worse than not doing it at all, and you should hold back?
I think this is all, the cop-out answer, but it is all context sensitive.
Yeah.
So if your brand is not, if your brand has a certain look and feel, and that the recruitment's got to match up to that, right? Because otherwise you're going to potentially be attracting people in who don't value your brand values.
Yeah.
So that's, you got to think about that. Low budget version, depends what is low budget. Is just going around doing something on an iPhone.
Well, even our early versions was an iPhone on a tripod. It was properly mic'd up, so the audio quality was good. Brushed your hair and ironed your shirt and that sort of thing. Had a bit of a script to go through, 30 seconds, a minute, nothing more. But there were no scene changes. There was no storyboarding. There was no other people involved. It was a very simple to produce thing. The lighting wasn't particularly managed. It was okay. You can produce an acceptable-ish version. Can't you?
I mean, I think that nowadays people are so conditioned to seeing content that is, of an increasingly higher quality, that it's probably harder to get away with doing. Yeah,
I think that's my gut feel on it as well. Probably depends on your brand and where you're trying to put it. But as you say, expectations now, even of the stuff we get to see on Instagram as you swipe through, or TikTok if that's your thing, or wherever, it's reasonably well produced, isn't it? You don't see much
it depends on who you're trying to attract as well. So if you're trying to attract creative people that are used to seeing all of this stuff, then you're going to want something that's reasonably well produced and high end, so they don't think, what's this?
Yeah, unless you're really good, come in and fix this for us, because we need someone to do this.
I mean, I did see, and I'm struggling to remember the name of the video of the company, but they made storage. They had storage, server storage racks and things, but they had this great company video that they did. They filmed it in a day. It was all pretty lo-fi-ish in terms of the quality, but what they were trying to get across was just come and look around the office, a reasonable sized company, a couple of 100 employees by the looks of it, But it was like, this is a really fun place to work. We do excellent work, but it's fun. And you go into the IT department. There's a big drawbridge and castle thing
really?
that and you go in that, and everyone's desks were personalised, and everyone seemed to get on, and you really got that feel.
You should know what you're expecting before you even apply. I mean, how many times you apply for? Well, you hear of people applying for jobs if you haven't, and you really don't know what you're turning up to until you start work. Especially if the interview's been done in a management office, or maybe even remote from the site where you're working. You're taking your life into your hands, almost literally.
That was a great example. Now, shot in a day. It was clearly well produced in the sense that, but it still maintained that kind of authenticity of being something that was about the people in the business. It wasn't it wasn't corporate at all, but it still came across as professional. And I think that's the difference.
And it probably wasn't done on an iPhone. It did have good audio and good lighting and scripted, and these things matter, don't they?
Yeah, you've got to. Otherwise, you just end up with randomness. You've got to have a start with a script. You've got to work out exactly what it is that you want to say.
The message,
and then work out what shots you need. Work out what you're trying to get across.
So I would encourage for business owners listening, if you've not been familiar with this, and it may be that businesses haven't done this, and you haven't done it yourself before, just Google it. Just Google the recruitment video, and there's a ruckload out there.
There's that great one, wasn't it? That engineering company.
Oh, yes.
The German engineering company. It's absolutely classic. Maybe we'll put a link to it somewhere in the podcast.
Yeah, there's some very funny ones out there. Is that where they all came to some unfortunate end in an engineering test?
Yes,
and so it said, we need some more engineers, please apply. That was very clever. Yeah. Okay, good. So the other thing I wanted to touch on just before we finish is the website itself and career pages. And got a bit of a bee in my bonnet about this, because it really doesn't cost much at all to have a decent careers page, or whatever you want to call it, on your website. Isn't that, especially these days, really quite important? And people and employees, prospective employees, are going to go to your website not just to see all the other stuff you've got, but also, what are you going to say about me? And so I looked at a couple of obvious ones, and I wanted to look at how do the PLCs do it versus just local to us, some companies that I know here, and compare that to what we're doing. And sure enough, the PLCs have got it well taped, as you can imagine. So if you go to Tesco or Google or anyone else, they've probably got a microsite just for employee or for applicants, not employees, but for applicants, careers dot or whatever it may be. And they've done it very well. They've put their values on there. They've put the application process. They've got videos of existing employees. They've got typical career paths, information about apprenticeships and graduate training schemes. As you could imagine, a company like that, they're going to do it well. That's pretty good. Then I went to just a couple of local firms, one manufacturer and one professional services firm. And I'll spare their blushes by not naming them. But the manufacturer did have a couple of vacancies live, and it had the job descriptions on their website. It wasn't particularly well formatted. It was basically the careers page and a couple of chunks of text, which was the job descriptions for each of them, and then an email at the bottom. If you're interested, email this person. Now, okay, they've got their job advert, job vacancies online, but it wouldn't have taken much. Maybe put a form on there, gather some more information about the person, let them upload a CV. Maybe tell them a bit more about the company's values or the application process or the hours of work, or I don't know, just could have made a bit more of an effort to recognise that the application process is a two-way street, and that applicant is choosing you as much as you're choosing them.
Absolutely.
It's a very old-fashioned view, isn't it, that we'll put a job advert up and they'll just have to like it or lump it.
Yeah, exactly.
If they want my money, then they'll come work.
Yeah.
So how would you say that compares, knowing what the Wellmeadow version is like? Where do you think we sit on that scale? With a lot of hand in developing that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think that we're at the more enlightened end of the scale. I think
we haven't gone for the microsite level.
No,
but then we're a small company, right?
Yeah, it's not quite microsite. We have split it out from our main navigation in a sense that it's just, trying to just say it's a different audience that we're going for here.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that we did was to try and we got a professional photographer to come in, take photos of the team, take photos of the office, so that we can put those on the site. So it just looks like this is what it's like to look here, right? No one wants to go. I quite like that actually. To an interview,
and it's not head and shoulder shots, just like you get on the About Us page. It's shots of people working, sitting around, talking in the environment where they work.
Yeah. So at least people can orientate themselves, get a mental map of where am I going to be sitting, working, whatever. Again, we've obviously got the video on there that we talked about previously.
Got the values. You've got that nice section, haven't you, where you split out from each of the values. It gives you a little bit of a description of it.
Description of the values. We also go into reasonable depth on a job description, talking about what's the purpose of it? What's the what are we looking for? What are the benefits of working Wellmeadow? Those sorts of things. So that's,
and we do a form. We don't just put an email address on there.
Yes, we do a form, and then we have maybe this is if people are interested, we sort of touch on this in the CRM episode of the podcast. But one of the things we did was to try and really automate the back end of the process when someone has applied, partly because people are applying
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So, and partly because you just want to make sure that when someone's applied, you're really touching all the bases. Yeah. So we had a number of different emails that came off the back of that were branded in line with the job description. So, if you've seen the video that we put together, the emails reflected some of the scenes from the video, just to kind of tie the two things together. This is what you're applying for. We also filled it with information about Wellmeadow, about the podcast, about HubSpot, and all of those links are trackable, so we can actually see what people are clicking on before they actually...
Have they been around the website?
Have they been on the website? Have they looked at, HubSpot training videos? Have they clicked on the podcast? And it just gives you another little dimension, particularly if you're looking for people who are a bit like, hey, we want people who are curious about, what does, you're not going to break the internet if I click this link, but what does it show me? What have I learned? Then you can build all that into your process.
And you need to filter out the people who all they've done is submitted the CV because they're playing some sort of numbers game themselves. They've got to invest a little bit and have a look around. And
then we leave it a couple of days, and then they get sent another email with a questionnaire to fill in, and that's all. And again, it's all branded. It's all making sure it's like consistent all the way through. That someone looks at this and thinks, yes, this is like.
Well, what you did on that, and you were the architect of a lot of that, you said, if this was going to be the ideal process that an applicant would see, then I want to know that as soon as I've applied, I want an immediate response. Then I want to know within a couple of days what's happening next. And every stage, have the process reminded to me, where am I at through it? Right, you've got through this stage, we're now at that stage. If you don't hear by Friday, then that's not happened yet, so we'll get back to you and tell you what's happening there. And that worked. It was great. It was just, it automatically churned out all the right responses, all the right time. Everybody was communicated. And then right at the end, there's the much more personal touch where you contacted everybody individually and asked them if they wanted feedback if they weren't successful. Yeah. And of course, there's a link to the Glassdoor profile for Wellmeadow as well. And we're not bashful about that. We haven't got 5 out of 5 all the time, but we have got a contract out on the person who gave us 4. No, I mean, we wouldn't put it on there if we weren't very proud of it, but we do find that employees who've moved on and gone somewhere else for the next step of their career after here, that generally they speak very nicely about us.
So I think, the whole thing, just you've got to be creative. People are looking for that now more than ever. Yeah. Applicants want to work somewhere where they can express themselves.
And you've got to be open. You've got to be talking about your purpose and your values and your vision and where you're going.
Authentic with it all. Reach out. Consistent with it all throughout the process. Yeah. So, if your value is, authenticity, be authentic throughout the process. If it's, creative, be creative in the process. Yeah. It's just, be true to you.
And on that note, we draw yet another podcast to a close. So thank you very much for listening to the SME Growth podcast from Wellmeadow. Please like and share your podcasts wherever you get your podcasts from, and tell all of your business colleagues and friends who run businesses that we're here and that we're worth a listen. And today we've been talking about marketing your business to potential job applicants. There's loads more resources on our webpage, and of course the famous video that Richard referred to where he does dress up in fancy dress. Leave the rest to your imagination until you've seen the video. Until next week, good luck with your businesses.